The battlefield was full of smoke, fire, and screams. Explosions echoed through the sky. Metal clashed against metal. Lasers burned the ground. It was the final day of the war between humans and the Jurkin Empire. Virel, a proud alien warrior of the Jurkan elite guard, stood tall in her black armor. Her green skin was covered in dust and blood. Her long silver hair flowed in the hot wind. She had fought in many battles before, but this one was different. This time, they were losing. Around her, her fellow warriors were falling. The enemy. Pushed harder, Virel did not run. She roared and fought back, her energy blade slicing through enemies. Her heart burned with rage and pride. She would not let humans win. Then, everything changed. A missile hit nearby. The shockwave threw her to the ground. A pain shot through her body. When the smoke cleared, she looked down and screamed. Her legs were gone. Blood poured from her shattered body. She tried to move, but she couldn't. Her armor was damaged, her weapon lost. She reached out, crawling in the dirt, but her strength was fading. Her vision blurred. She looked around for help. Her squad ran past her. None of them stopped. Her commander looked at her, then turned away. "She's done," he shouted. "Leave her." "No," Virel whispered. "I'm still alive." But they didn't listen. In Jurkan tradition, a warrior with no legs was seen as useless, a burden. Her own people had left her to die. Tears mixed with blood on her face. Her pride was shattered. She wasn't just dying, she had been thrown away. Then, footsteps approached. She prepared for death. Maybe it was a human soldier coming to finish her. She tried to reach for a rock, anything she could use as a weapon, but her hands were weak. But the figure didn't shoot. He didn't raise a weapon. He knelt beside her. It was a human. A soldier in dirty armor, with a scar across his cheek and blue eyes filled with something strange kindness. "Are you still alive?" he asked softly. Virel bared her teeth. "Why do you care, human? Kill me and be done with it." He looked at her wounds. "You've lost a lot of blood, but I think I can stop the bleeding," she growled. "Don't touch me." But he ignored her words. He pulled out a medical kit and sprayed a foam over her bleeding stumps. The pain made her scream, but it also stopped the blood. He wrapped her legs carefully, working quickly. "Why?" she asked again, her voice shaking. "Because I don't leave people behind," he said. "I'm not your people," she whispered. He paused, then looked into her eyes. "Doesn't matter. You're still someone, and someone needs to care." She stared at him, confused. No human had ever spoken to her like this. No one, not even her own kind, had ever cared when she was weak. "What's your name?" she asked. "Kyle," he answered. She let her head fall back on the dirt. "Virel," the sounds of battle were fading. Both armies were moving away. Kyle looked up. His radio buzzed. A voice crackled through. "Unit 9, fall back. Now, we're evacuating." Kyle held the radio. He looked at Virel again. She was unconscious now, her body limp. The voice repeated, "Fall back or get left behind." Kyle didn't answer. He picked her up slowly, gritting his teeth. She was heavy in full armor, and he was tired. But he stood up with her in his arms. The battlefield was quiet now. Smoke rose in the distance. Wounded bodies lay everywhere. Kyle looked in the direction his team had gone. Then back at the alien girl in his arms. He whispered, "You're not dying here, not like this." And he walked into the smoke, carrying the paralyzed warrior who had once been his enemy. The smoke had thickened. Kyle's lungs burned with every breath, but he kept moving. Virel's body was heavy on his back, her blood soaking through his uniform. Each step felt like dragging a mountain, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. His radio crackled again. Unit 9, respond. Why haven't you returned? He pressed the button and spoke low. I've got a wounded, non-human. I'm not leaving her. There was silence. Then came the response. She's the enemy. She's not worth the risk. You're ordered to abandon the target and return now. Kyle threw the radio to the ground. His boots slipped on the ash-covered rocks as he reached the edge of a crater. Down below was the ruined shell of a crashed dropship, half buried and smoking. It was cover, maybe, even shelter. He carefully slid down, holding Virel close. Inside the wreckage, it was cooler, dark, quiet. He laid her down on a broken seat, her silver hair falling over her face like a curtain. She looked peaceful until her eyes snapped open. She reached up weakly and grabbed his vest. Why are you still here? Kyle knelt beside her, opening a ration pack and pouring water into a cap. Because I don't leave anyone behind. You're not like the others, she muttered. Humans usually shoot first. And your kind just left you there, he said, a little sharper than he meant to. Virel looked away. Jurgen Honor says a warrior who can't fight is already dead. I knew they wouldn't help me. Kyle handed her the water. I'm not Jurgen. She took a sip, then whispered, You're strange for a human. He gave a small laugh. You're strange for an alien. Despite the pain, a weak smile touched her lips. Then suddenly, footsteps echoed above them. Kyle's hand shot to his rifle. He peeked through the broken wall. 2 Zircon scouts were walking by. They were searching bodies, executing survivors. One of them turned toward the wreck. Kyle pressed a finger to Virel's lips. Don't move. Don't breathe. The scout's shadow fell across the entrance. Kyle's heart pounded. He aimed his rifle but didn't fire. The shadow paused, then slowly moved away. A long breath escaped Kyle's lips. They were Jurgen, he said softly. Your people. I know, Virel replied bitterly. They wouldn't have helped me. They might have killed me themselves. Kyle looked at her, really looked at her not as an enemy, but as someone left behind, forgotten by everyone but him. You're not going back to them, he said. I have nowhere else, she whispered. You do now. Virel stared at him. Why would you trust me? Kyle looked down at his dirty hands. I've seen good people do bad things. I've seen enemies become allies. I trust what I see, and I see someone worth saving. For a moment, there was silence. Then she asked, What's your rank? Sergeant, he replied. Marine Division. And you're risking your career, your life. For me. He shrugged. Maybe I'm tired of watching people be left. Behind Virel's eyes softened. For the first time in years, someone didn't see her as a weapon or a broken thing. Suddenly, she groaned in pain. The wound in her lower back had reopened. Kyle tore off part of his undershirt, cleaned the wound, and rewrapped it. Her voice shook. You're not afraid of me. Should I be? He said gently. I've killed humans, she admitted. Voice full of guilt. I've killed Jurgens, he replied. War makes killers of all of us. Their eyes met. There was no hatred now, just 2 broken soldiers trying to survive. Outside, the war moved on. Inside the wreck, something new began. Something fragile, something human. The air was thin inside the wreck. Dust floated through the sunlight, slicing in from a torn hull plate. Virel lay on her side, awake but silent. Her face was pale, her breathing uneven. The painkillers had worn off. Kyle sat beside her, holding a half-working scanner he'd pulled from the wreck's medical bay. He didn't fully understand Jurgen biology, but he could read one thing clearly. She was losing strength fast. He leaned in. We have to move, Virel. She didn't reply. We can't stay here, he added. This ship is leaking heat. Drones will find it. Her voice was low and bitter. Then leave me. Go. Save yourself. Kyle stood up slowly. You really think I came this far just to walk away now? She didn't answer. Her golden eyes stared at the twisted metal above them. He knelt beside her again. You're not just some injured soldier. You're still a warrior. I have no legs, she said coldly. Your Khan warriors don't crawl. We die on our feet. Then. Good thing I'm not Jurgen, he replied, 'cause I don't follow that rule. Kyle reached under her and gently lifted her up again. Her weight pressed into his back, heavier now that her armor was cracked and soaked. His knees trembled, but he stood. Step by step, he climbed out of the wreck, boots slipping against the crater's edge. Virel grunted in pain with each jolt. You don't have to do this, she said, voice shaking. I do, he whispered, because they didn't. Once they were out, the true challenge began. The land was rough and broken. Sharp rocks and glass from fallen ships made every step dangerous. The sun was setting, casting orange light across the ash-covered ground. Kyle walked. He walked past bodies, some human, some alien. Weapons lay beside cold fingers. The silence was haunting. Even the wind was afraid. Virel rested her head on his shoulder. Her voice was barely a breath. Why didn't you become a commander? Kyle gave a dry laugh. I disobey too much. She almost smiled. Then, you were born for this moment. He didn't reply, but his grip tightened around her. Hours. Past night came. The cold bit into him like teeth. His legs burned. His back screamed. He dropped to his knees once, panting hard. Put me down, she said softly. You're going to die. No, he growled. Not yet. She looked at him from over his shoulder. You're strong. But this war doesn't care about strong. I don't care what the war wants, he said, standing again. A few miles ahead, the lights of a burned-out watchtower blinked in the dark. Maybe it had supplies, shelter, or maybe it had enemies. Kyle didn't care. He had to try. They reached it before dawn. The tower had collapsed partially, but the basement was intact. Inside, it was dry, dark, and cold. But there was an old cot, a medkit, a broken communication console. Kyle placed Virel down gently on the cot. She winced, but didn't complain. He found a power cell and plugged in a portable heater. Weak warmth filled the air. Virel's eyes closed as her shivering stopped. Kyle collapsed on the ground beside her. He couldn't feel his legs anymore. You carried me. All this way, she whispered. He smiled faintly. I told you. You're worth it. She looked at him with strange eyes, alien, yet soft now. Not sharp with pride, not cold with rules. I was trained to see humans as weak, she said. And I was trained to shoot jerkins on sight, Kyle added. They both chuckled quietly, then fell silent. The war outside was still going, but inside that broken tower, under broken stars, a different kind of strength was rising. Not from weapons, not from orders, but from one man carrying the weight of a warrior and her learning that maybe, just maybe, being carried wasn't weakness after all. The sun had barely risen, but danger was already awake. Kyle stood at the ruined window of the broken watchtower. His rifle rested in his arms, eyes scanning the gray horizon. The wind was sharper today, carrying voices not human ones. He couldn't understand the words, but he knew the tone. Jurkan patrols were near. Behind him, Virel stirred. Her breathing was steadier now, her skin less pale. The emergency heat cell had worked, and the medkit's injections had stopped her fever. But she was still too weak to stand. Kyle turned toward her. We've got company. She slowly opened her eyes. Human. Or Jurkin. He checked his scope again. Virel's lips tightened. If they find us, they'll kill me. To them, I'm ashamed they want erased. Kyle nodded. Then, we don't let them find us. But before they could move, static crackled from the old communication console in the corner. It buzzed. Then a human voice came through. This is command. Sergeant Kyle Reyes, you are ordered to report immediately. Intelligence confirms you are harboring a hostile life form. Failure to comply will result in detainment to our termination. Kyle stared at the radio. His face was still, but his fists clenched. Virel looked up at him. They've turned on you. I expected it, he said calmly.
Open you?
It was never part of the rules. She touched his arm. You can still run. Leave me. You don't have to fight both sides. He looked down at her, eyes firm. I'm not leaving you. Not when both our worlds want us dead. Outside Jerkin. Soldiers passed like shadows. One of them stopped near the tower. Inside. Kyle held his breath, a noise glass shifting. The soldier approached. Kyle raised his rifle, finger on the trigger. He didn't want to kill again, but he would, just as the Jerkin stepped through the doorway. Virel called out in her native tongue. The soldier froze. She spoke again, stronger this time. Kyle didn't know the words, but the tone was powerful, commanding. Noble, warrior-like. The soldier hesitated, then backed away. Kyle lowered the rifle. What did you say? Virel exhaled. I told him I was still a warrior. And that if he touched you, he'd answer to me. Kyle smiled, even without legs. You're terrifying good, she said. That means I'm healing. But things only got worse. An hour later, the console buzzed again. Last warning, Sergeant Reyes. Your location is known. A drone is en route. You have 10 minutes to surrender the alien. Do not resist. Kyle looked at Virel. She was calm. Too calm. You're planning something, he said. She nodded. I was a commander once. I know what comes next. A strike team. They'll erase everything. He moved quickly, grabbing rations, medical gear, and a blanket. We have to go now, he said. I know a cave system nearby. If we move fast, we might lose the drone's signal. I can't walk, she reminded him. Kyle paused. Then he wrapped the blanket around her and lifted her onto his back again. She protested. You're hurt, tired. This is suicide. Then I'll carry you through hell, he said, stepping out into the cold light. Behind them, the tower exploded. The blast threw dirt and fire into the sky. Kyle shielded her with his body as debris. Rained down, they hit the ground hard. His ears rang. His arms burned, but he was alive. So was she. He stood again, bleeding now from a cut near his neck. Still think this is suicide? He asked, breathing hard. Virel, dazed but alive, replied. Softly, no. I think it's war. And you're winning. Rain began to fall. It wasn't a peaceful rain. It was cold, sharp, and full of ash. Each drop stung like a tiny needle. The sky had turned dark, thunder rumbling in the distance. The war-torn valley was now a muddy trap. Kyle staggered through. The wet ground, his arms locked tight around Virel's body. Every step was harder than the last. His boots slipped in the mud, and the cut on his neck had soaked his collar red. Virel rested her head against his back. Her body burned with fever again. Her voice was low. Kyle, you're going to break. I'll break after I get you safe, he said. Breathless out in the distance, jagged rocks rose from the earth like broken bones. Between two cliffs, Kyle spotted what he hoped for, an old bunker built into the side of a mountain. Its door was half open, overgrown with vines and soot. He limped toward it and shoved the metal door open with his shoulder. Inside, it was dark, damp, and smelled of rust, but it was shelter. He laid Virel down on a dusty bench. Her face was pale, sweat dripping from her brow. The pain had returned. Kyle tore open the ration pack. He had little left, just one thermal patch, some pain suppressants, and a dried protein bar. He gave her the patch and placed it over her side, then offered water from his flask. Virel's eyes fluttered open. "Why do you keep helping me?" He sat down beside her, breathing heavily. "Because every time I think about giving up, I hear your voice telling me not to." She blinked, surprised. "Even when I told you to leave me?" "Especially then." Thunder cracked outside. Lightning flashed, briefly lighting up the bunker. Water dripped from the ceiling, but they were safe for now. Kyle found an old toolbox and dragged it toward the center. Inside were pieces of metal, wires, and broken drone parts. He studied the gear. "If I can fix that power coil, I might get heat running." "You're not an engineer," she murmured. "Nope," he said with a grin. "But I'm very stubborn." He spent the next hour working with shaking hands, cutting wires, attaching metal plates, sparking life into dead tech. Virel watched him quietly, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Finally, the sharp pop and a flicker. A heater near the wall buzzed to life. Warm air filled the room. Kyle fell back, exhausted. Virel let out a soft sigh. "Insane, maybe," Kyle said, "but warm." The silence that followed wasn't empty, was full of things unspoken. She broke it first. "In my world, warriors don't ask for help. They die proud, even if it means dying alone." Kyle turned to her. "Sounds like pride kills more than bullets." She looked away. Maybe we were wrong." He scooted closer and checked the bandages on her legs. They needed changing, but at least the bleeding had stopped. "I was raised to think your kind were animals," she whispered, "and I was raised to think aliens were monsters." Kyle replied. They looked at each other for a long moment. "No monsters here," he said. "No animals either." She replied. Then she reached for his hand, not with strength, but with trust. Her fingers touched his. It was the first time they touched like that, not as enemies. Not as soldiers, but as people. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside the bunker, two souls, once broken by war, began to find something new. Not just survival, but something worth surviving for. Days passed in silence and storm. The war outside had moved on, but the memory of fire still burned in their bones. Inside the bunker, Kyle worked like a machine repairing scraps, boiling water, reshaping broken tools. Virel watched him every day, unable to move much, but never looking away. She wasn't used to stillness. Her life had always been motion battlefields, commands, glory. Now, trapped in a broken body, she had nothing but time. And in that time, she began to see things differently. Kyle wasn't just helping her survive. He was rebuilding her piece by piece. One morning, Kyle found a pair of broken exobraces near an old drone carcass. He spent hours cutting them down, adjusting the hinges, attaching straps and motors. He didn't speak much, but every time he looked at Virel, he looked like a man chasing something impossible. When he finally brought the braces to her side, she stared at them. "What is this?" she asked, cautious. "A start," he said. He helped her sit up, gently sliding one brace over the stump of her right leg. Then the other. She winced with every touch, but didn't stop him. "They won't carry your full weight," Kyle said, adjusting a strap. "But if I support you, maybe you can stand." Virel looked at him, unsure. "What if I fall?" "Then I'll catch you," he answered, without hesitation. With great effort, Kyle lifted her to her feet. Her arms clung to his shoulders. The braces clicked, groaned, and held. She trembled. For the first time since the battlefield, Virel stood, even if only for seconds. Tears filled her eyes, Not from pain, but from something deeper. I thought I'd never rise again. Kyle smiled, eyes damp too. You're rising now. They practiced every day. She leaned on him, not just for balance, but for hope. Her body was weak, but her spirit. It was returning, and Kyle, he felt it too. Each step she took was a victory for both of them. Not just against their enemies, but against everything they were told to believe, that humans and aliens couldn't trust, couldn't care, couldn't feel. But they did. One night, as rain tapped gently on the metal roof, Kyle lit a small heater and sat beside her. They ate quietly, sharing the last of the rations. The silence wasn't awkward anymore, it was peaceful. I used to think all humans were afraid of us, Virel said suddenly. Kyle looked at her. Most of us are, but you're not. He shook his head. No, I was afraid of becoming like them. The ones who follow orders without thinking. The ones who leave people behind. Virel nodded slowly. That's how I lost my team. They followed the code, not their hearts. You and I, Kyle said, we don't fit their rules. And maybe that's why we're still alive, she whispered. They looked at each. Other two soldiers from different stars, now bound by fire, fear, and faith. Then Virel asked softly, do you miss home? Kyle paused. I miss who I was before the war. Pooh. But not the world that made me a weapon. She nodded. Me too. He reached out, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. Maybe we can build something new. Not a war. Not a mission. Just something real. She closed her eyes for a moment, then leaned her head against his shoulder. I think we already are, she whispered. In that broken bunker, with storms fading and hearts opening, something unspoken passed between them, something stronger than armor, deeper than orders. Not love, not yet, but the first spark of it, forged not in peace, but in fire. The sun finally broke through the storm. For the first time in days, light poured into the valley like a soft golden river. Birds returned. The wind no longer screamed. It was quiet, too quiet. Kyle stood outside the bunker, his rifle slung over his shoulder, watching the sky. His muscles ached and his wounds had scabbed over. But something in his chest felt heavier than ever. He knew this calm couldn't last, and he was right by midday. They heard it, a low hum, growing louder. A sound both familiar and feared. DROPSHIPS. First. One, then two. Then a third. One bore the human flag, the others, Zircon. Kyle looked back at Virel, who now sat upright on a crate, her makeshift braces glowing faintly. She had gained strength. She could move. She could speak without pain, but she couldn't run. He walked over. They found us. She didn't ask who. Then it's time. For what? He asked. Virel looked him in the eye. To stand. One last time, he helped her up. Her legs trembled in the braces. Her body shook, but she stood. Together, they stepped outside. The dropships landed with roaring engines. Soldiers spilled out from both factions, humans on one side, Zircons on the other, weapons raised, helmets on, fingers twitching near triggers. And in the center of that crossfire stood two figures. Scarred, tired, and united, a human, an alien. A commander stepped forward from the human side, helmet off, voice cold. Sergeant Reyes, you're under arrest for treason. From the other side, a Zircon officer spoke. Virel of the Red Blades, you were declared dead. You bring dishonor by standing. Kyle glanced at her. Want me to do the talking? Virel smirked. Let's speak together. She raised her voice first, loud and clear. You abandoned me when I was broken. He carried me when I had nothing left. He showed me strength, not in weapons, but in loyalty. If that's dishonored, then your honor is poison. the Zhurkans muttered. Some lowered their rifles, others looked away. Then Kyle stepped forward. I disobeyed because I saw a life worth saving. If saving her is treason, then I'd rather be guilty than be like you. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The commanders hesitated. One human soldier lowered his gun. Then another. On the Zhurkan side, a warrior stepped back. Then another. The wall of hostility cracked, just for a moment. Then someone shouted, "They're trying to twist us. Shoot them." Chaos stirred again, but Virel didn't move. She looked at Kyle. If this is the end, I'm glad I found you before it came. He reached for her hand. Then a third voice rang out, a young Zhurkan. Helmet off, eyes wide. She's alive because he carried her through fire. Is that not strength? Another human echoed. He didn't betray us. He showed us what it means to fight for someone. The tension shattered not with violence but with voices. The commanders stepped back. No shots were fired. Instead, silence returned. A silence full of realization. What happened that day was not written in any official report. No medals were given. No statues raised, but stories were told quietly, in camps, on ships, in whispers of an alien warrior who was left behind, than the human who carried her home. Not because they were allies, not because they were the same, but because, in the end, they chose to be more than enemies. They chose to be human.